back, baby. Watch each other's back. Got a weapon?
Okay.
Got another good. Now you got one? Go! 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 Back me up, man. Back me up. Allahu Akbar!
Ladies and gentlemen, another very iconic U.S. service rifle, made famous in the Second Battle of Fallujah, as we affectionately know it in the military, or in the Army anyways, the M16A4, the musket. Let's go ahead and get started. Why, hello, fellow marksmen and markswomen. Welcome to Marksmanship Past and Present. And yet again, we have another very famous GWOT rifle, the M16A4, made famous by the Marines in the Second Battle of Fallujah, as you guys just saw in the clips. But before we get into today's rifle and the history, we do have to make a sacrifice to the algorithm gods. So, as we all know, they don't like me because I talk about guns. They don't like you because you guys watch videos about guns. I mean, they don't like guns. It just is what it is. So, do me a massive favor. Hit that subscribe button. By doing that, you're sacrificing that button to the algorithm gods, and we're going to beat that thing together. If you guys like the content that we're putting out here, where we go over the history, the doctrine, the adoption, and shooting it according to the doctrine, whatever weapon, go ahead and hit the like button. That, again, helps drive that algorithm. If you use today's rifle in combat, or we're in the Second Battle of Fallujah, please drop those comments below, and that's how we preserve the history together, because that's what this channel is all about. Alrighty, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get into it. As always, sources are linked in the description. Let's go ahead and talk about the development and the history of the M16A4. Okay, so before we actually really take a deep dive and start looking at the specifications of the M16A4 and its capabilities, we have to understand why it was developed. So we are going to take a little bit of a trip back in time to the early to mid 1990s and take a look at what was going on during that time. So there wasn't a whole lot militarily and war-wise that was really going on, not a lot of conflicts. I mean, yeah, there was Desert Storm and, you know, Bosnia and Kosovo, but really nothing a major war that we're involved in. So the military is kind of taking a look at what's going on with their M16A2, and they're like, how can we make this better? How can we get more use out of it? So really quickly, the M16A2 was just an improvement on the M16A1. So you had round handguards, fixed carry handle, and it had safe semi-burst. We'll go into that rifle in another video at another later day, but that's what they currently have, and that's the basics of it. 20-inch barrel, all that. So they're looking at this, and they're like, okay, I mean, this rifle's good, but can we get more out of it? So specifically, SOCOM is looking at that, and they're exploring this through the SOTMOD program, which we all know, and it's led to a lot of other rifles that we have talked about on this channel. And they recognize it just by simply punching out two receivers, swapping an upper receiver group, you can completely change the role of that weapon system. Whether it's having a CQBR receiver for close quarters, nice short compact thing, having an SPR receiver, and then boom, you got the Mark 12. You got something that can engage accurately at different distances, and it really creates a lot of force multipliers. You can have a lot of soldiers armed with different styles of rifles, and you have a much more effective force to effectively kill and destroy the enemy. So they're looking at this and like, okay, so one of the things they're looking at in the SOTMOD program, which led to the Block 1 program, was the rail system. So they're looking at this and like, okay, so with a rail system, we can now add lights, lasers, pistol grips, bipods, things like that. And it's like, okay, we can attach a whole bunch of different force multipliers that make our troops more lethal in combat, especially with lasers and then night vision becoming more prevalent and easier to obtain. Another thing they were looking at was, okay, well, let's kill this carry handle concept of being fixed. We can just attach it if we want it back. But now we can add some 1913 rails to the top of it. Now we can attach optics, which allow our soldiers to aim and be more effective at close quarters with red dots, have a fixed magnification optic like the ACOG later down the road, and now we can see at medium distances to longer engagements, or if we really need to, we can throw a scope on it like the Mark 12 and really get out there along with a free float rail system. So they're really seeing all of this stuff stack up and really starting to get the big picture of what would later lead to the M16 and the M4s that we know nowadays. So the conventional units quickly caught on to this program, and they're like, hey, that stuff can actually make our soldiers a lot more, sailors and Marines, don't want to miss anybody, that can make everybody more lethal in combat. Why wouldn't we do that? That's a pretty big investment. And the Marine Corps caught on because of the M16A2. They're like, we're liking that. So in 1997, the Marine Corps adopts the M16A4. The U.S. Army adopted it for a very short period, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. So now that we've talked about the development, why it was made, and adoption, let's go ahead and bring the camera a little closer. Let's take a look at what makes the M16A4 the M16A4. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we have our M16A4 assault rifle brought up close and personal. Now, what is really the big difference between the M16A4 and the A2? Not a lot. So we still have that 20-inch barrel. It's a rifle-link gas system shooting 5.56. It's gas-operated, air-cooled, and fed by a box magazine, specifically the 30-round Stanag mags. But where we really get into the differences is going to be the first one is this rail system. So as you can tell, it can attach a number of force multipliers. So you've got pistol grips or the grip pod. Those are probably your two most common. You could attach an assortment of flashlights, typically a number of different style Surefire lights. Some had IR, some had just regular white lights, some had both. You also had the ability to mount your different IR lasers up top, your PEC 15s, etc. Moving back, now we see, yes, you had the carry handle. Later on, it would take on the Motec flip-up sights, and it has flat top 1913 rail here for you to mount a variety of optics, typically aim points, Comp M2s, Comp M4s. We knew them in the Army as the M68 or the Trigicon ACOG. So you also had a number of different Knights Armament rail panels that could be attached. And that's really the big difference. So it still retained the safe, semi, and burst mode. Now the burst mode, a lot of troops, myself included on the M4, the original M4, did not like the burst mechanism. And the reason why is if you were on semi and you fired 1 or 2 shots and then flipped it to burst, depending on how many rounds, because it's not a resetting ratchet system, that burst mode would only fire whatever's left in that cycle. So if you fired 1 shot and then flipped it to burst, it would fire only 2 shots. If you fired 2 rounds in semi-auto, you would only get literally another semi-auto round, have to reset your trigger finger press, and then you're running 3 rounds. So it would really throw you off. It was not the most effective thing, which is why we would see it go away later, but that's for a later video. Now, that is pretty much what we have in the video that you're going to see here in a little bit. We did have the Trigicon ACOG because we did see a lot of these used on this rifle because of that longer barrel. And it really did make a difference, and it made it very easy to shoot this rifle out to the distances that you are fixing to see. Okay, let's go ahead and bring the camera out and let's talk about the ammo and the capabilities. Alrighty, so we talked about the rifle, its features. Now let's talk about the ammunition and its capabilities. So, at the time of current issue of the M16A4, the round was the M855 round, the older one, not the new A1. That's another video. Now, we're not going to cover the development of the M855 in this video. I'm saving that for another video, but here's the bird's eye view of it. So the M855 round was a 62 grain projectile with a 7 grain steel penetrator. Now, it was not armor piercing in concept of piercing body armor, but it would basically penetrate lighter barriers with that steel penetrator. So car doors, windshields, light barriers like wood, things like that. So the rifle, especially with the M16 and that 20-inch barrel, the muzzle velocity was just a shade over 3,000 feet per second. So it did go down a little bit from its predecessor, the XM193 round, which used a 55 grain projectile. But it wasn't enough to really make that much of a difference, and they would have rather had that steel penetrator to actually, cut through some of those harder barriers. Now, the M855, we got to address the elephant in the room. As we would find out later in the Global War on Terror, it was a relatively inaccurate round. It was not known for its pinpoint accuracy, but it was minute a man, so it was good enough for conventional troops. At least that's what the military thought it would be good for. Later on with like your SPR series, there's another round that would be developed. If you're curious about that round, go watch the Mark 12 and the Mark 18 video, and you'll learn about the Mark 262. But back to the M855. So that round typically can turn a 1-inch gun into about a 2 to 4-inch gun, depending on the barrel and the quality and twist rate and all that stuff. So out of the M16A4, which already the rail's touching in 2 spots, it's not a free float rail, you're typically looking with that ammo and that rifle about a 3 to 4 minute gun, give or take. So 3 to 4 inches at 100 yards. As you're going out to distance, that cone of fire really starts to spread out, especially by the time you reach 600. So at least on the Army side with the M16A2, typically a point target is going to be running right around 300 meters, and area target's going to be running right around 600 meters. So basically, point means if I can aim at it, I can hit it, I can effectively neutralize that threat. Area denial roll. If I can hit the enemy, I'm going to hit the enemy, but mainly I'm concerned about keeping them pinned down so we can maneuver and fire, or deny them from coming any closer to us. So now that we kind of talked about the rifle, the ammo, and its capabilities, let's go ahead and take a trip out to the gun range. Let's test this rifle out to 200, 400, and 600 yards, and let's see how she does. All right, guys, so we got a trusty M16A4. We got a Trijicon ACOG here. We got 10 rounds of M855 ball and a target at 200 yards. So let's see what this old girl can do. All right, here we go. I pulled that one. Two is pretty easy. Let's move on to 3. All right, so I handled 2 so well. We're just gonna go straight to 4. We're skipping 3. So, got another 10 rounds of M855. Let's see what she'll do. That was nothing. 4 M16A4 8-4 for breakfast. That's pretty cool. All right, let's keep a pushing her. All right, we are at 600 yards with the M16A4, and we are now entering the area effective fire range. I have done this several times off camera, and I've been able to hit the target semi-consistently, but we're at the limitations of this rifle. So to demonstrate area fire, here we are, 600 yards. Sounds like we might have gotten some hits there. I won't know until I look at the spotting cam footage, but there you go. So, is the M16A4 a capable rifle? Yeah, definitely. So, let's go ahead and get back to the gun room and let's finish up with our final thoughts. All right, guys, so we're just going to close out the history and with my thoughts and shooting experiences of the M16A4. So overall history here. So the M16A4 faithfully served the United States Marine Corps from 1997 all the way till 2015, till it was phased out. And everyone's probably like, well, why was it phased out? Well, the answer is quite simple. It was the M4 and the M4A1 carbine. The U.S. Marine Corps realized, like a lot of the other branches, that 14.5-inch barrel on the M4 was a really good compromise in velocity and utilitarianism of the M4. It was able to do a lot of things, and it was a really good jack of all trades. It was relatively good at CQB, but still had the lethality to get out to that 600 area range, that 300 point range, at least in the Army doctrine anyways. So overall, the M4 became the pretty much standard service rifle all across the branches. The Marine Corps were the last branch to use the M16 as an iteration of their service rifle before they went to the M4. So the U.S. Army did use the M16A4 for a very, very short period, but they quickly recognized, and the frontline troops recognized, hey, that M4, that thing's pretty awesome. We're going to go with that. And they adopted that one really quick out the gate. So the M16A4 didn't see a lot of service through the Army, but that is a side note that I did want to throw in here. So far as my shooting experiences, how do I like the M16A4? Overall, it shoots very soft because of that rifle link gas system. It was plenty effective out at those designated combat distances. It did its job very well. You know, it was relatively easy, especially with the ACOG, to make shots at 200 and 400 yards. That 600 yards, I could definitely see that cone of fire really start to widen out. The wind really affects that round because we had about 10 to 12 mile an hour winds that day, and it was causing some issues, but I could absolutely see that cone of fire being the big issue because of this being a 3 to 4 minute gun. So overall, though, I did like how it shot. I can absolutely see why the M4 overtook it because, as you saw in the Battle of Fallujah, it was very close quarters fighting. And I've heard stories from people that were over there that by the end of the day, like instead of reaching out, your hand just starts to kind of come back and come back and come back. And eventually you're holding the mag well by the end of the day because your arms are at muscle fatigue because the gun is a musket. It's heavy. We say that affectionately, but it's you could see that it was at the end of its time and that the combat had evolved to such closer ranges that a shorter rifle was very necessary. So overall, good rifle, but a day late and $1 short. Okay guys, so that is the end of our M16A4 video. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, like, and share the video. I really enjoyed making this. Drop it in the comments what you guys want to see next, and we will get to work on that. So, I'm Chris Smith from Marksmanship Past and Present. Remember, guys, your right to self-defense is self-maintained. Love your family, love God, love your country. We'll see you guys in the next video.